Okay, so here we're going to be looking at the TOEFL reading section, and we've got several slides that we're going to go through for the types of questions, strategies, what to look for, how to handle the reading section. And right now, asked in the chat box area, what any previous scores that you received and your target scores. So far seeing some people getting 23, getting 20, 24, first attempt of 9, first attempt at 20, target of a 28, getting 24, but also needing to get 27. Previous about 15, another one 17, getting 22, 13, a target of 26, 17, 20, needing 21, okay, 16, 21, 17, 19, okay. 22, 17, 22, okay. Yeah, there's a whole mix on here as well. And feel free to use, when you're chatting, writing here, you can use the message, share the message to like everyone in the meeting. If it's a direct message, I'm the only one that can see that, but I think we all benefit from seeing other people's comments here. So yeah, 22. Yeah, struggling with the last question. Okay, target 28. Yeah, so a lot of you I can see in these higher 26 and above, or 20, yeah, 25 and above. Yeah, okay. And yes, please talk about the inference question. Yes, we'll get there. Okay. Okay, yeah, so there's a lot of numbers there so far. Thank you for sharing there. And so let me get on the screen here. Okay. And I'll get this as view slideshow. Okay. And I'll keep an eye on the chat box as well. Okay. Okay, so for those of you who may not be familiar with me, my name is Jonathan, and I have been teaching overall for about 22 years, maybe 23. And also, please let me know that you can see my slides, because that'll be important so we can go through here. If you can just give me like a thumbs up or to say that you see them. Yes, thank you. Okay, yeah, we can see that. Okay, great, thank you. So if you are on social media, you can find me on Facebook as Huggins International, on Instagram, teaching at English with Jonathan. On YouTube, I've got a few TOEFL prep videos. I want to create more videos for the YouTube channel, but here are a few places, and you can check out the website as well, Huggins International. So let's get into this. So why exactly do a lot of students reach out for my help on the TOEFL test? So this is my score from my second attempt of taking the exam. The first time in 2017, I got a 117. So I did receive a 28 in reading, 29 in listening, 30 in speaking, 30 in writing. At that time, a lot of my private students were asking me to only focus on the speaking and writing section. And I said, fair enough. They said they wanted to work on the reading by themselves. And I said, okay, that's fine. Then when I went to take the test, I was realizing that because I had been only focusing on the speaking and writing sections, I had neglected a little bit the reading section. So when I didn't get 30 and I got 28, I realized that in some places I was guessing, In some places, my strategy was not as effective as I thought it was. Also, I think I was rushing a little bit. So that meant that I wasn't being as cautious as I should have been. So a lot of people would say 28 is great, but it wasn't 30. And so the next year after that score, when students said, oh, I only want to focus on speaking and writing, I said, well, let's actually dig a little bit deeper into these reading strategies. So that next year, between like 2017, 2018, I was getting really, really, really focused on these reading strategies. So that's like 4 years ago. On top of that, just more and more insights working with students in the reading section. So I'll share with you lots of these tips and strategies that I've been sharing with other students because I think like process of elimination, noticing red flags, noticing little tricks and traps that ETS puts together. It's important to kind of really work on your reading strategies. And if you're here today, it's probably because you're not getting that target score yet, and there's still room for improvement. So hopefully you're going to get a lot out of this session today. Okay, and let me know in the chat box, like what would make this a great session for you to make sure that I can kind of really deliver on that expectation. So, okay. So what we're going to be covering here, and this is what I mentioned in the email before joining today. So we're going to be looking at the 10 types of reading questions. We'll be looking at like 1 or 2 examples for each type. We're looking at some of these strategies for each of those types. Also looking at the wrong answers, because understanding how ETS makes wrong answers will be a way for you to work on this process of elimination. And if you start looking at this from a like statistics and probability perspective, if you run out of time and you leave blank answers, you've got a 0% chance of getting the right one. But if all you do is just guess 1 out of 4, that's 25%. If you're able to eliminate at least one of these wrong choices, there's usually a very, very wrong one that's a little bit easier to detect. That brings things up to like a 33% chance of guessing if you can get one of them out of the way. If you can get 2 of them out of the way, now it feels like you're flipping a coin and kind of 50-50. That's still better odds than if you only eliminated 1 of them. And finally, if you are able to get rid of 3 wrong choices, that's basically meaning you know what the right answer is. So don't just focus on trying to find the right answer. Also help yourself by eliminating the wrong ones. And then usually students tell me that getting down to that 50-50 is where things get a little trickier, and then you need to be a bit more sensitive to small details in the paragraph that's supporting the answer there. Okay. We'll talk a little bit about like time management as well, because most of the time students are usually getting 4 passages instead of 3. So in your practice sessions as well, don't just do 3 passages. Also build up your stamina, build up your energy for 4 passages. And on the day of your actual test, I usually encourage people to warm up with an extra passage or so that by the time you are like warmed up, it's the beginning of the test, not the middle of the test. So what I mean by that is, if you just sit down at the computer and you say, okay, I'm finally getting my head into this reading passage and warming up, you're actually wasting time if you're warming up in that first passage. So I would suggest like have a PDF or have something on your phone that you can look at when you're in the waiting area before the test starts. And that's kind of getting your mind active already. Just like athletes before a game or before a match, they're stretching and warming up and going through some exercises and some drills so that when the whistle blows and the game actually starts, they're ready to perform. They're not warming up after the whistle blows. We'll look a little bit at some of these effective ways to get started. So some people usually ask me, like, what should I do with those first 3-4 minutes? Should I read the entire passage? Should I look at the first sentence and last sentence? Should I only focus on the first paragraph? So we'll talk about that a little bit. And we'll go through these practice questions together and look at some of these red flags and traps. Okay, so there's a lot of material that's out there on the internet. So if you've taken the test before 2019, this is the variety of the questions that are on there. These are the 10 types of questions: factual information, negative factual, inference, rhetorical purpose, vocabulary, reference, sentence simplification, insert text, prose summary, and fill in a table. So that was the variety that there was about 3 years ago. As of 2019, the test was modified, and several reading questions in terms of the variety were reduced. The types of questions still exist, all of the 1 through 10, but how many you can expect on each passage has reduced. So now let me put them side by side so you can kind of see and compare them here. So previously there were 12 to 14 questions. Now there are 10. The factual questions, there used to be about 3 to 6 of them. Now it's gone down to 2 to 5. Negative factual ones is still the same. So between 0 and 2 of them. You might not have one when it says 0. Inference questions, there used to be between 1 and 3. Now it's between 1 and 2, but 1 means there's a minimum that you will see at least one of them. Rhetorical purpose question has basically stayed the same. There used to be 1 to 2. There's still between 1 and 2 of them. Vocabulary questions, there used to be a lot more of them, between 3 and 5 of them. Now it's gone down to between 1 and 2. So a lot of students used to focus on vocabulary development as their reading strategy. Now vocabulary proportionally has gone down a little bit. Okay, reference questions, these are still rare. We'll look at an example of them, but you don't always have them on the test, and it's usually probably referring to like pronouns and things. Like, what does they refer to? Sentence simplification, you don't always have one of them. In both cases, between 0 and 1 of them, so that hasn't changed. Insert the text question, there's always one of those. You can always expect an insert the text question. And then between prose summary and fill in the table, I would say the fill in the table one is less common than the prose summary. Prose summary is where they give you 6 sentences. You have to choose 3 of them. And then usually students are telling me that they can get like 2 of those 3 correct, and they're usually missing a last one. So we'll look at that one a little bit as well. Okay. Okay, so buckle in. I hope you've got like a coffee or a drink or something, a bottle of water or a glass of water, that you can get comfortable here and have like pencil and paper. Also, don't worry so much about like taking tons and tons of notes. I will get you the slides to this so that you don't have to worry about just constantly writing stuff down. I'd like you to kind of follow along with this. So along with the replay video, I'll make sure you get the slides so you can kind of go back and review what we've seen here. Okay. So, okay. So the first thing I need to tell you a little bit about the kind of mindset for this test is that a lot of students think they know how to read, think they are comfortable with the reading, but unfortunately, taking the reading section on the ETS for the TOEFL, it's a little bit like going to a fairground or carnival game where you're a bit overconfident, especially in this case, like the reading skills, and thinking like, oh, I know how to read. I've read books before. I read the newspaper. I read the magazine. I read stuff on the internet. However, ETS is hoping that you will be overconfident and will not be paying attention to small details. So just like if you're doing basketball, like at a fairground, everything is non-standard. The hoop size is smaller. The height is at a different one. The distance from where you're shooting is non-standard. They've probably overinflated the ball so that when it does hit the rim or the hoop, it's not going to go in the way everything else would be like when you're playing a standard set of basketball. So as a student, as a test taker, you need to outfox the fox. You need to be aware of little tricks and traps and red flags and be on alert. You need to have eyes on the back of your head. You need to be realizing they're out to trick you, because ETS makes money when you don't get your score. I've become cynical the more I teach this test, but it's the truth. They don't give you like your 10th test is free because you've done this enough times. No, they keep making money the more times you fail. So just like at a fairground, if they make that game difficult to win and you get frustrated and say, no, I know how to play basketball, like I'm going to do this, that little frustration, it propels you to kind of keep going. It becomes a little, at a fairground, it becomes a little addictive, but basically they're there to make money. And if you keep doing it to try to prove a point or something, you're going to keep giving the money. For the ETS, it's in your interest to be a very alert and prepared student. So that's what we want to cover here for the session today. I want you to be able to kind of outfox the fox, because they're there hoping that you're going to be distracted, or that you're going to be stressed out, or that you're going to be anxious and going to be making some sloppy mistakes. Okay, great. So let's dive into this one by one. We'll go through these types of questions. Now, this information that I'm sharing with you is actually coming from the official guide. As I was preparing these slides, I was going through taking some notes, paraphrasing a few things, and taking pulling information that is from the official guide. So this isn't me making stuff up. This is actually taking information that ETS has shared. Okay, so a factual information question, they want you to identify specific information that's explicitly stated. Explicit means they state this clearly. You're not guessing, you're not reading between the lines. So these are facts, these are details, these are definitions. They're not looking for general ideas for the factual information question. They want you to be looking for something specific. And usually the answer is within this range of like 1 or 2 sentences around a phrase that is in the question. So the phrasing, the wording that you'll see for these types of questions, because it's important to kind of recognize based on the wording of the phrase, wording of the question, this will help you know what kind of question are you looking at, and based on that, what strategy are you going to use for that? Okay, so for example, these could be according to the paragraph, which of the following is true. The author's description mentions which of the following, according to the paragraph. This occurred, or according to the paragraph, something did something because. So you're looking at this kind of reason or explanation. According to the paragraph, why did do something? The author's description of mentions which of the following. So a lot of these ones mention this kind of according to the paragraph. Okay. So now the wrong choices, usually on here, there's something that's contradicting what's in the passage. And they also mentioned here, like, don't just select an answer because it's mentioned there. they're hoping that you're going to do that. And that's why I put a picture here of a mousetrap where it's like, oh, that's free cheese. So if you only catch a couple kind of key words, I usually notice that like half of the sentence for an answer choice might have a key word that's exactly the way it was in the paragraph, but they're hoping you're going to be a little distracted, or they're hoping that you're going to say, oh, well, that was easy. That's exactly the same spelling, the same way it was written in the paragraph. That's kind of like the carnival ground, fairground kind of game where they're hoping you're kind of, oh, that looks easy, I can do this. What you should expect probably is a little bit of rephrasing. So one way that they can rephrase this is taking like an adjective and a noun and rephrasing it as like a verb and an adverb. Let me just write something here. I didn't like give an example of that here, but if I said something like let's say here, like a national publication, this is an adjective and a noun, and you could turn something into publish it nationally. That would be taking a verb and an adverb. Essentially, the idea is the same, just the grammatical structure between an adjective noun to verb adverb has been changed slightly. They do this, I can see in other examples, is with like easy and easily for making that kind of a switch. So don't get scared if you notice this little change. The idea is staying the same. They're usually using some kind of a synonym and a grammatical modification. And pay attention to this, because this can also help you with your other sections, like the speaking section and the writing section. If you're sensitive to this kind of flexibility with the vocabulary and the grammar. Okay. So it adds some variety in the sentence structures. And it makes you a better reader if you can notice it. So, okay. Let me just write that there and there. Okay. Next, I'm going to take that drawing off. Okay. So, and when you're selecting an answer, it should be specific for this question, not just a general thing. Okay. So let's take a look at this example. And this PDF, if you want to follow along, let me see if I can get that. No. Let me see if I can copy this link. Yeah, okay, let me copy that and put that in the chat box. So yeah, there it is. Okay. Okay, so that's the PDF. If you want to follow along, that is a PDF that comes from ETS on their free practice sets. So we're going to be taking several of these questions from there. Okay, so this is a question that says, according to paragraph 4, what has recent research on Obsidian tools found at Olmec sites shown? And then we can see in the paragraph where the sentence that starts with moreover, it has those words that are from the question. Let me just put this little drawing tool here. We've got this, recent research on Obsidian tools found at Olmec sites has shown. So that's what we got in the question here, that exact wording. This one, I would say, is an easier example because they're being very, very they're giving you a lot of keywords in there. Okay. So what do you think? Let me know in the chat box. What do you think is a good answer for this one? Yes, great. Okay. Yeah, I got several of you already answering choice D. Yeah, okay. A lot of you are answering choice D. So notice also this synonym for the word originated is also this like came from. So the meaning is the same. This is also one way to enhance your vocabulary, is to be looking at these differences between what I would say like general standard English, like something like come from, and then words that have a Latin, Greek origin, something from like Romance languages like Spanish, French, Italian, Portuguese, Romanian, that come from Latin. If you speak a Romance language, you probably have an advantage over me as an English speaker, because when I was growing up as a English speaker, most of my standard conversational English is using phrasal verbs like come from, go to, sit up, sit down. And it's not until I get to middle school, high school, university that I start supplementing my English with these academic sounding words that are coming from Latin and Greek, which usually have 3, 4, 5 syllables. And I would highly recommend, I'll need to get a link here, but on Wikipedia, there's a link of these like Latin, Greek origin words that I usually share with students. And also there's a list of kind of academic sounding words and their parts of speech, like nouns, adjectives, verbs, adverbs. So if you don't speak a Romance language, which a lot of cases, like my students who speak Arabic or some languages in India, several languages, Asian languages, those languages usually don't have all that influence from those Latin and Greek roots and things. So if that's the case, if your language doesn't really have a lot of those roots, I would supplement. I would highly recommend that you kind of supplement your vocabulary, because a lot of what is academic English is usually coming from these longer Latin Greek words there. Okay. Now I mentioned that it's important to kind of look at the wrong answers as well, and to start detecting what makes these wrong answers wrong. And if you can detect them quickly, you're almost becoming kind of like a ninja that can kind of, or like a fencer or a sword fighter, that you can see an attack coming at you and kind of defend yourself. So letter A, let me change the colors here. So Scythian's value was understood only when Teotihuacan became an important city. That only when is a detail that kind of is a red flag for me. And it says that down here at the bottom, it says like they must have recognized this as a valuable commodity for many centuries, not just when Teotihuacan became important. This was recognized for many centuries. So that only when, that's enough of a detail for me to say no. Be sensitive to those little restrictive phrases like only, always, never. ETS sometimes throws these extreme phrases in there to see if you're paying attention. And if you can notice them, be careful, be on the lookout, because that might be helping you notice that there's a wrong answer. Okay, then the residents of Teotihuacan were sophisticated tool makers. Well, these tool makers, I think they talk about that as these Olmecs. Where is it? Say there. No, actually, it doesn't say that. So this one is just not. No, this is not in there. It's not mentioned. So that's just making something up that they didn't say. So if you notice something and you say like, well, I don't think they saw that, then notice that as a wrong answer. So they didn't call them these tool makers. Again, this is not an inference question. It's a detail, a factual question. So it needs to be there directly, explicitly stated in the paragraph, not something that you're guessing. Okay. Then the residents of Tijuana traded obsidian with the Olmecs as early as 400. And that's that as early as, so this is a little annoying because with the timing with BC, so you have to think kind of like negative years. There is no year 0, but you kind of have to think, okay, this is 400 before year 1. And you have to, like, if this was the modern era, then between the year 400 to 1200, it would start with 400, and then 800 years into the future would be 1200. But when it's BC, you have to think opposite. So 1200 BC is earlier than 400. So I'm not a great math student, but sometimes in these reading passages, when it gets into some like really ancient history, you need to be careful sometimes about the timing and realizing, especially when it's things that are bridging or overlapping this kind of BC and modern era. Sometimes you need to be careful on what's early, what's late, what happened first, what happened next. So here they're playing with this timing logic of saying, so 1200 BC was earlier than 400. 400 would have been the stopping point on there. So when you're looking at how they're making these answers wrong, now you have a little bit of an idea of kind of be on the lookout for these kinds of these situations here. Is this all clear so far? Am I going too fast? Is this helping? Clear. Thank you. Okay. Great. Okay. Thank you. Crystal clear. Okay. Thank you. Yeah. I'm happy to hear that. Okay. Thank you. Yeah. Good information. Thank you. Yeah. Okay. Great. So let's keep going here. So I saved a picture of this. I'll be able to kind of share a picture of that along with that video that we're doing here. So I'm going to clear the drawings here. If you want, you can take a snapshot quickly on your phone or something. Now I'm going to switch to the next slide. Okay. So yeah, so we've got D, some of the obsidian used by the Olmecs came from there, and we're looking at that block, that sentence there, which I basically already explained there. Okay. So another example here, same type of question, factual information question. This is from the next passage in the practice set. This one is about the extinction of the dinosaurs. Okay, so it's a different topic. Okay, and it says in here, according to paragraph 1, which of the following is true of the late Cretaceous climate? Okay, so which of the following is true of the late Cretaceous climate? Okay. We'll take a second there to and for this strategy, we're looking at the question itself. Then we're looking at like trying to find some of these keywords that are in the question, and then looking at the paragraph. So I would say go from the question, try to find some of these keywords, and then in the text, I'm looking, okay, here's late Cretaceous climate, and that's helping me notice within that section of the paragraph, what am I looking for? Try to find that information that's there, then start looking at the answers. So the question, look for keywords, go to the paragraph, look around, surrounding those keywords, maybe a little bit in front of it, just a little bit after it within that kind of 1 or 2 sentence range. Then when you kind of get the idea for yourself, we'll go over and look at the answer choices and see what seems to match. Yeah. So a question here, should I look at the answer choices first? And actually, I prefer not to. I prefer to go look at the keywords, find those keywords in the paragraph, and then see like, what do I notice in the paragraph about those keywords? Then look at my answer choices and see which of those answer choices kind of matches what I already understood. There's a risk that the answer choices first could confuse you, and there might be a little bit of this kind of a bias where you say, oh, I saw that. So you're kind of looking for a wrong answer in the paragraph. I prefer to look at the keywords in the paragraph and let that idea kind of arise in my understanding, and then find an answer that matches that understanding that I have. So yeah, a lot of you are saying letter D. So yes, that's great. Okay, so this not changing dramatically is basically a way of saying that this was, not too warm, not too frigid. It's kind of like this Goldilocks, like not too hot, not too cold, just right. So this was, not too hot, not too cold. So things were kind of a little bit more stable for that. Okay, so just get here. So yeah, we're looking in that section there. This is not changing dramatically. It's in that area of it's milder. And as I mentioned, we also want to look at what makes these wrong answers wrong. So on here, they're saying that this was very warm and very cold, but that's contradicting the text, because they've got like, no, it was not too hot. So be careful with your vocabulary range between like too hot, not too hot, very warm. Those can make some differences in there. Now, the shallow seas caused this frequent temperature changes, and I don't see where it's talking about. Yeah, it's got the seas. Okay, here it's got these shallow seas. It doesn't quite explain that this is causing. Okay, so it actually says, okay, over down here, shallow seas buffered the temperature. So that meant it kept it constant. Okay, yeah, so the shallow seas, this detail down here at the bottom of the paragraph, that's contradicting it. So to say that these shallow seas caused it, that's wrong. It's actually saying it's buffering it. So that's like a way of making sure it doesn't get too extreme. Okay, yeah. So they talk about seas in the beginning and the middle, but it's actually down at the bottom sentence where they're saying like, no, this is not the cause. So careful with a word like causing it, like a cause and effect. If that cause and effect is switched around or they're making this up, that's a potential wrong answer there. Okay, and then letter C, the climate was very similar to today. Well, actually, in this section where it says late Cretaceous climate was milder than today. So that's a contrast. That's not the same. It's not similar. So this very similar? No, it's not similar. There is a contrast. Okay. So this is the technique I'm usually looking for, is like take those keywords, try to look for them in the text, but also, if possible, just to give myself a little bit of a kind of a peace of mind to know that my answer was correct. I usually want to eliminate these wrong choices. And like I said, if you can eliminate 3 of them, like not A, not B, not C, that gives me more clarity and more peace of mind that I chose D because I noticed these details. And I also eliminated A, B, and C. So that gives me a lot more confidence to move forward with the questions. Okay. Okay. So move on from here. I'm going to clear that. Okay. So that's our first question, which is kind of like 1 out of 10. We got a few more to go here. Okay, so those are the strategies for a factual question. Okay, negative factual is kind of like the opposite of a factual one. In this case, they're giving you 3 things that are there, and they need you to detect the one that's not there, which is why I have a little bit of a picture of a shopping list when grocery shopping, because you have a checklist of the items you need to get at the grocery store, at the supermarket, and then you have your basket, and you're looking at your list and going like, okay, I got this, check. I got that, check. I got this, check. What's missing? So this shopping list in the picture has more than 4 items, but for the sake of this test, you've got 4 items on your shopping list, and you want to figure out, okay, 3 of them are in your cart. Which one is missing? That's a bit the mindset of what we're looking for here. So check, check, check. Okay. And then these details, they might be spread out throughout the paragraph. The one that you need to select is usually contradicting something, and it can be contradicting it in a very small way. It could be a prefix, it could be a suffix, it could be singular, it could be plural, it could be a small detail. It could also be a change in meaning. There's an example I'm thinking of. I unfortunately didn't get it into these slides, but there's a changing meaning, like a secondary meaning of a word that is out of context. There's a classic example I'm thinking of for that. But the wording on here, according to the passage, which the following is not true, or the author's description of something mentions all the following except. So you usually see these words not or except in capitals. And then you're doing this check, check, check. What's there? Okay. And like I mentioned before with the like national publication or published nationally, they're usually using some rephrasing of these vocabulary words, the parts of speech, the noun, adjective, verb, adverb. Okay. So here's an example. This one is going back to that one about the Teotihuacan in Mexico. Okay. So this is looking at this description of the city. And as I mentioned here, it's a little annoying when you've got the time expressions going between, actually, no, this is the modern era. So that's like between, like that's modern era 150 up to 700. But you can see that in the beginning of this paragraph, they've got the BC time. So between like 200, 100 BC, and then you've got AD 150 to 700. For me, I find that a little annoying to be looking at time expressions at the time. But so, and then you've got the description of that city kind of within this like middle section of the paragraph. Okay. So what do you notice for this answer choice? See a couple people mentioning an answer so far. Yeah, okay. Several of you are mentioning B already. Yeah, great. Okay, so what do we notice about letter B? Well, there's actually a couple things wrong about B. In terms of the information, B is the correct answer that you need to select. So B is the one you need to select. And as we said, like B, in terms of its information, it's contradicting what's in the paragraph. So let's just take a second here to show kind of what is in the paragraph. So we've got regularly arranged streets. Now they call that a grid. If you've ever been to New York or you've seen a map of New York City, that's a grid of avenues and streets. It's almost like a math geometry kind of a thing. So where it says this regular grid pattern of streets, that is referring to the A, so that's there. The many manufacturing workshops, they talk about these as industrial workshops, Also, the phrase a large number is giving us the word many. So they're rephrasing that one. That's already in there. We've got the word apartment complexes, 2,000 apartment complexes. So that's there. Now, so this is just a little different from what we did on the first question, the factual one, where we're trying to eliminate wrong information. Here, we want to find what's already there, but what's not. So we just kind of have to switch this around. Okay. Now, what exactly is the problem with choice B? Well, they got the word several, but here they've got an, which means one. They've got centers with an S, but here it's singular. Then they've invented this extra information to say that this is spread across the city. No, if there was only one of them, then it's not in multiple places, it's just in one place. So they've done like 3 things on here, using the word several, making it plural, and then adding this prepositional phrase to say it's in like different parts of the city. So there's like 3 things there that are like 3 things that are making that answer the one you should select. Okay, let me look at this question here. Should we write in scratch paper because we were not able to underline lines? Well, for the sake of teaching this workshop, so you can see what I see, I'm underlining stuff, and I would not actually recommend on the actual test to be writing a lot of stuff down until maybe around the summary question. No, actually, where I would write stuff down is if you're stuck. So if you're eliminating something and you are looking at your timing. So on the test, the way it is right now, you've basically got about like 90 seconds max per question. And I would say averaging 3 minutes for every 2 questions. So that could be 1 minute for an easy question and 2 minutes for a hard question. If you start to notice that you are wasting more time than that, move forward, and then use your scratch paper to say, okay, so answer A, no. B, no. C, question mark. D, this is kind of maybe. So use some little system for yourself that you can know, okay, on passage number 1, question number 2, I'm hesitating. I don't think it's A or B, but I'm stuck between, I'm not sure about C. I'm leaning towards answer D. Then let that information kind of sit. Don't spend like 5 minutes on a question. You're going to be, that's going to be a bad time management. You're going to run into problems with that later on. You might not feel that problem in your first passage, but you will definitely feel it when you get to the 3rd or the 4th passage, when you realize like, okay, I wasted time in the first passage. Now I don't have anything left, and I have to rush. So you do want to give yourself some kind of aim for like 50, let's say aim for about 16 minutes per passage. Because if you look at the timing, you've got 54 minutes for 3 passages. I should have had this stuff on that slide, I'm sorry. 72 minutes for 4 passages. And what that means is max 18 minutes per passage. But I would say leave some time aside for review or kind of, I don't know, review or double checking. So yeah, in terms of your notes, try to maximize your time moving forward. But if you need to, use scratch paper just in case you have like a little bit of doubt and you want to come back to it a little bit later. So, okay. Yeah, so those are my problems. Yeah, time and not being able to underline. Yeah. If it helps you, I mean, everybody's a little bit different. Some people are very visual. Some people can retain a lot of information in their memory, their short-term memory. This test, it is also checking your memory in terms of short-term memory for like the 15, 18 minutes per passage. So, and oh yeah, also some people mentioning that they're a slow reader. Yeah, this kind of a reading for the sake of the test, it's not reading for pleasure. So you need to be reading with a purpose, kind of like grocery shopping in 10 minutes. I usually get accused of grocery shopping as if I were walking around a museum, and that's not effective kind of time management, being organized. So think of it like you're shopping on a Sunday afternoon. You want to get in, get out, have an organized list, know where you're going to go find stuff in the supermarket, and get out. So yeah, the timing, you want to be prepared and recognize how to be an effective reader for the sake of answering questions, not necessarily reading for deep comprehension like you would at a university where you've got lots of time to, well, not necessarily lots of time, but you have to go through lots and lots of chapters of reading quickly. So one thing I'm usually recommending to do for the reading is kind of look for nouns and verbs. That's usually detecting like the grammar of a sentence is going through the what's the subject, who's doing the action, and then look for a noun, or sorry, look for a verb, look for the action. So going between like these subjects and verbs, subject and verbs. So let me just move my finger over this paragraph. So I've got like the city of Teotihuacan, so that's a place. I've got these commas, so this is a dependent clause. So you want to get into some grammatical understanding as well. And so, okay, I've got a comma here, and then I got a comma over here. That's a dependent clause, so that's just telling me the location. Then I've got these verbs. So Teotihuacan began its growth. Basically, it grew, and then this time phrase. Then another time phrase at its height. So it had a population. So it's telling me where it's located, when it grew, how many people live there, how big it was, covered 20 kilometers. So I'm trying to simplify that stuff in my head as I'm identifying this information, because it's usually very dense. It's going to be having a lot of information that some of it important, some of it not. And you need to be kind of being able to paraphrase that stuff very quickly, especially for the sake of answering questions. Answer questions. It's not necessarily reading for pleasure, reading for taking a test on this like 3 months from now. You need to just retain enough in your short-term memory to answer the question and then move on. Okay, let's keep moving forward on here. I'll save another picture here. Okay. Any of you getting information overload so far? I hope not. I hope this is easier to follow along with. Okay. Here is another example of a negative factual question. We'll move through this one a little faster. I'll give you a hint. There's a small detail, a very small detail making this one. Okay, yeah, so BC time, this is before, well, in the religious perspective, before Christ. So this is like the ancient kind of Romans, the Greeks, the Egyptians. This is kind of prehistory in some cases. And then AD, which in Latin is like Anno Deum, which is again referring to Christ. This is also the modern era. In some textbooks, you'll see BCE, which is before Common Era, so they don't make a religious reference to Christ. And then CE is like this Common Era. But the timing aspect can be a little annoying sometimes where you're... Okay, what answers do you start noticing for this one? Any guesses? Well, don't guess, but any... Okay. Great, okay. Now, this time I'd like you to justify. So a lot of you or a couple of you are putting letter C. Why C? What is it about C that why is it that you're selecting C? What stands out in the answer choice C? You are correct. It is C, but I just want to know why did you select that? Okay, yes, process of elimination, all of the reasons are already mentioned. Okay, yes. But what else about C? Yeah, that is one thing. All the rest, all of these reasons were mentioned, but what else stands out? Anything else stand out? Because this other factor is difficult to pinpoint. C and okay. Yes, very good. Somebody pointing out the word inactivity. Yes, it's the reverse. That's the opposite there. So that little prefix, this little prefix of in is enough to make the opposite, to contradict this information, because it does what in that box that I highlighted here, it says that there were volcanic eruptions. There were these volcanic eruptions. And if you said inactivity, that would be saying that there are no the volcanoes are not erupting on there. Okay. And then going through like this checklist, I'll try to do this just a little bit faster. So they've got the presence of obsidian. So they've got, it says, yeah, the obsidian resources, the extensive irrigation, the trade route, which was, where's that word? Yeah, on a natural trade route. So those three things are there. So that's a check, check, check. So as somebody had mentioned, yeah, all these other three ones are already there. But what I do like to look at is in that answer choice, aside from the check, 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 is what is it that in this answer choice C is possibly contradicting information that's in the paragraph. And it's that little tiny prefix that changes everything. So be sensitive to small little details that could make or break the right answer. So again, as I mentioned, like the fairground, the carnival games, they're hoping you're not going to be paying attention, that they're hoping that you're going to be stressed out and going to be just kind of your eye is wandering or distracted. So don't be distracted. Be attentive to small details. They can get you more points on here. Next. Okay. Okay. Next, inference question. Now, this is where a lot of people, so the inactive contradicts which word? So the inactive is contradicting active. So I would say look up antonyms. And I would say like common academic antonyms. So these are opposites, especially with prefixes. These can be these kind of extra letters at the beginning. And I would say actually a lot of these kind of Latin and Greek prefixes would probably help you detecting some of these wrong contradictory information. Okay, inference questions. This is a lot where a lot of students struggle because it's not as explicit as these detail questions and exception questions. So you need to look at the argument, the idea that's being implied. So that means that they're not saying it clearly. You need to kind of draw a conclusion. You need to be a little bit like a detective, like a Sherlock Holmes, looking for some clues and piecing together a conclusion based on those clues. So for example, if there's an effect, what was the cause? So notice how in one of those questions about the shallow seas caused the temperature change, they were using the word cause in there. And so if you notice something that could be like, that looks like an inference question, but it's a detail question, they could be kind of checking, are you aware of the difference between a detail question and an inference question as well? If there's a comparison, what is the basis for that comparison? Okay. So they want you to look at the logic of some of this information. Okay. So typical phrasing, things like this are, which of the following can be inferred Infer is what you do in your head for the conclusion. Imply is what the author writes or what the professor says in a lecture, is that you're kind of reading between the lines. So the speaker or the writer implies something in the passive voice to be inferred. That's what you do as a reader, as a listener. You are making inferences based on the information. So infer and imply are related. It's just the speaker implies, the listener, the reader infers. Okay. So which of the following can be inferred from paragraph 1? And then again, this contradiction, you want to make sure that the idea isn't contradicting anything. And don't just select something because it looks important or true. And you should be able to look at something in the paragraph that is supporting your answer choice. And these little observations, these are coming from the official guide. This is, again, not me kind of making some of that stuff up. These are details coming from the ETS official guide. Okay. So let's look at this one. Again, I mentioned that the timing phrasing can be a little annoying, but this is actually important for this question. So this one, prior to, means before. And we've got that phrase here, prior to 200 BC. And this is actually, for me, kind of a classic example of an inference question that they give me some information before, and then I have to kind of, they give me information before and also after, and I have to kind of piece together like a detective. So what are you noticing for this one? Okay, well, you already got some answers. Yeah, we've got some answers coming in. Okay. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. A lot of you are selecting the correct answer there. Okay. So this question, it does show an inference, and it's kind of based around this one sentence around here, that their land was covered in lava. So if they were eliminated because of that, it means their economy, they're not specifically explicitly saying it this way, but without land, because it's covered in lava, they can't grow any crops. So their economy was based on trading food that they grew. So this is that D. I mentioned also look at the wrong answers. So what makes them wrong? So Quilco, it was, okay, so somebody asking why not C? Okay, let's start with letter C here then. So it emerged rapidly as an economical and political center. That one is actually referring to Teotihuacan, because it says with Quilco eliminated, any of these other cities, they might have emerged as a leading economic political power, and that's Teotihuacan that did that. So it's not that Quilco did that. So that it is the wrong city. So Quilco was eliminated, and it's after the volcanoes that Teotihuacan emerged instead. So that's a tricky little thing in here in this paragraph. You have to be careful about what the pronouns refer to and the order of this information of what happened first, what happened after, and which thing is being referred to. Like the it is this city, but actually this detail about the merging and the power is a different one. But when you're reading and slightly distracted, it's very easy to accidentally select C, thinking that it's correct. So again, attention to small detail for this one will pay off because it will help you like not select that one. It was a fairly small city. Actually, it says the largest of these centers was Cuicuilco. So it was not small. It was the largest. Okay. This says it was outside, and it says it was in and near the valley. So again, this is kind of like an opposite. Sometimes they're making these like very, very, very opposite. Sometimes they make it a little bit subtly difficult. So inside, outside, that's a big kind of antonym contrast there, and that can be enough for us to know like, okay, that's wrong, and so it's this one. Okay. Okay, let's move on to another example here. This one about the dinosaurs again. I'll give you a second to look at this one. I think some of this might be cut off. Let me just make sure the paragraph is readable. No, sorry. Just move that up. Sorry about that. Let me go back. Okay. I accidentally showed the answer, but so I think you accidentally saw the answer to this one, but this might be a little harder. The information is a bit more dense. Yeah, that last line is a little, yeah, it disappeared again. Let me read that. So it says, yes, so the unusually high concentration of IR seems to require a special, a special explanation. Yeah, it's a tricky thing if I check on if I click on the screen, yeah, okay. Yeah, I cannot read that last sentence. So yeah, the second I open up Zoom again, yeah, this paragraph is a little tricky for that. Okay, let's move forward on this one. So this one, yeah, I'll try not to look at the chat box for a second because the second I click over for Zoom, it pulls up the bottom part of my screen. So in this area, the bottom where it says, so the unusually high concentration of IR seems to require a special explanation. This is a harder one, I do admit. They say that letter D here, this clay, it was too great to have come from microscopic meteorites. So the idea is like, imagine you have a table in your house and dust is little by little, dust is collecting like day by day, and you don't touch that table. Little particles in the air, dust is going to settle on your table. But then imagine if all of a sudden you have a huge, I don't know, I don't know, you pick up a whole bag of dust and just dump it on your table. I wouldn't recommend doing that, but that's kind of the effect that they're talking about with this IR, is that if this like was in one huge meteorite that had it, that was all concentrated. Yeah, so basically like you're looking at your table and you're seeing like, oh, I've got all this huge pile of dust. What happened here? So this is not consistent with an idea of like, okay, dust gradually setting on your table day by day after day. That this is suddenly a huge influx, a huge concentration there. That's kind of like what they're looking at here in this paragraph. So there's too much of this that didn't just come from these microscopic or these tiny little meteorites depositing this material little by little. So letter A on here saying that this would have been incorporated into the core. I don't see it talking about the core. No, they don't talk about the core. Yeah, so this one incorporating the core, that's just not mentioned. Then this was this boundary clay. Let's just check over here. Yeah, it doesn't. Yeah. Oh wait, it does mention the core in the second line. Sorry, where's it? Oh, sorry. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I also sometimes neglect to see something quickly. So yeah, incorporating the Earth's core. Because it usually exists in a metallic state, it was professionally incorporated in Earth's core as the planet cooled and consolidated. Where is... During the Cretaceous period, would have been incorporated. Wait, this cooling and consolidating, that's much earlier in the Earth's development, as to say that the planet consolidated. So like if it was still super hot and full of volcanoes and like no animals or anything could have existed there, I think that is earlier in the planet's history. It's this very beginning of the planet's history, not yet in the time frame that they're talking about here. This very beginning, not at the time of the dinosaurs, which would have been much later on in the Earth's history. Okay, so that's why letter A, I would say no. Then in this boundary clay, where do they talk about the boundary clay? Oh, okay, the boundary clay. This might have taken by measuring how many of these they can get, the scientists estimate how long it might have taken. And its calculations suggest that a period of about 1 million years. And over here to say a million years ago is not the same. So the ago, that's making it wrong. So ago, a million years ago was, well, I don't know, 2022 minus 1,000. But that's not the same thing to say that it took something a million years for it to form. Looking at the dinosaurs and all that stuff, they were alive for like hundreds of millions of years. So, and that was like the closest was like 60 million years ago, the dinosaurs. So ago is different from a period of time. Okay. So just be careful of that. So a period versus how long ago, that's also making that wrong. then the concentration is higher than in microscopic meteorites. So letter C feels like they're comparing apples to oranges. The clay, this boundary clay is just all on the surface of the planet, and these microscopic meteorites are just tiny. It's this cause, this part about this, like, to have come from that. It's not just that this has more than this, it's that this that amount, or in this case the concentration, it requires the time frame and this explanation for letter D. Now in all honesty, this kind of a question, if I were kind of stuck on this and spending way too much time trying to analyze it, like as a student on the test, I would say, and I've gone over a couple minutes and go like, okay, this is not, for 1 point, I'm willing to, maybe if this is a harder one, like an inference one, if I have to lose a point, I would be willing to kind of, yeah, this is too time killing, exactly. So if I feel like I'm spending way too much time on an inference question and realizing like I need to keep moving forward, this is one of those little things where you have to kind of make a quick decision to say, okay, am I going to get my head around this question and get the answer quickly, or is this going to be a huge time suck and then just for 1 point? So sometimes you do have to like figure out where can you cut your losses. Yeah, just that last sentence kind of mentions this special explanation. Okay. But it would be possible for me to get stuck between like C and D. I could eliminate A and B, but kind of C and D would probably, I would be hesitating a little bit on the test. So it is still a learning process to look at these harder ones, but also sometimes looking at that little kind of, am I willing to lose 1 point because this thing is just, it's taking too much time. Okay. Let's keep moving forward because I want to get through these other questions there. Okay, rhetorical purpose. This is when rhetoric is the sense of logic and how information is presented in a paragraph. It's also related in the listening section of why does the speaker, why does the professor say this? So it's the why, what's the purpose, the use, how does that information relate to other things that are there? And it might even be in the reading section here, how one paragraph might relate to another one, or how the sentences relate to each other in the paragraph itself. So the way it's worded can be things like the author discusses something in paragraph 2, why the in order to is that objective, that purpose, the why does the author mention, or the author uses as an example of something. So they do mention in the official guide that you should be familiar with these vocabulary words. So these are things like definition, example, illustrate, explain, contrast, refute, note, criticize, function of. They specifically said be aware of the meanings of those words. So I went and looked these up in the Macmillan Dictionary and gave copy pasted those here for you so you could be aware of those. Because those words will be part of these questions that you'll see. So they're not all synonyms. They do have a few little differences there. You might want to take a picture of that. Okay. And moving forward. Okay. So an example here. In paragraph 6, the author discusses the thriving obsidian operation in order to, and why are they pointing that out? And we've got those words: explain, example, illustrate, explain. Okay, so yes, some of you mentioning letter C. Yeah. So for C, we've got where it says here this classic feedback, positive feedback loop. We have saying that all of these factors contributed to and leading to this wealth that continued to attract more people. And then at the bottom there, all of this resulted in more power and wealth. So there were many factors that were contributing to this whole positive cycle for that. Okay. For this one, I want to keep moving forward, so we won't have so much time to just focus on the wrong answers for this one. I want for the purpose of time, I want to keep moving forward here. Okay. Now, for why not D, it doesn't mention this source of conflict. It doesn't mention. I mean, it mentions kind of attracting people, but it doesn't say kind of there was problems or conflict with that. Okay. Okay, so then, sorry, no. Oh, no, sorry. Sorry, I think I showed the answer before showing the text without the answer. Okay. So this one is another rhetorical purpose question based on the one about the dinosaurs. It's a little bit cut off at the bottom. I'm sorry. So these examples of these snakes and lizards, and saying that they survived, but the dinosaurs didn't, based on their temperature. This is this explanation doesn't quite seem to explain what happened. And then at the bottom here, let me just go back onto the screen. I got these two slides reversed. Sorry. So this part here about this hypothesis of a simple climatic change is insufficient to explain all this data. Sorry, I reversed those two. I had the answer before that one. So this hypothesis doesn't seem to. Adequacy is saying that this hypothesis doesn't make sense. Okay. Thank you. Yeah, I'm enjoying the class greatly. Yeah, okay, I'm happy to hear that. Thank you. I appreciate that. So yeah, hoping you're noticing some details here, noticing some things that I'm noticing for like as an English speaker, as a trainer. There still is some stuff that is a little hard to pinpoint from time to time. Some of these like rhetorical purpose question, inference questions, they can be a little tricky sometimes. Okay, let's Okay, this will be a little faster. Vocabulary is a bit more straightforward on here. Okay. So vocabulary, you need to probably look at the usage and the meaning of the word within the passage itself, not just the word, the way you kind of, the way you understand it alone. It has to be the way the word is in the passage, and it has a specific meaning and usage there. If you're like, oh, I know that word, you could be tricked by it's like, oh, I think it means this, but you need to look at the way it's being used specifically in that sentence. Okay. If it's something technical or unusual or has something special, it'll usually be defined for you. Like in the previous one about the Teotihuacan, they gave at the bottom of one of those paragraphs the word obsidian and explained what it was, like a volcanic glass kind of a material. So you weren't expected to know that word. But if it is a vocabulary word that they are testing you on, they will highlight this, and they're looking for a synonym, something that is close in this meaning. Let's look at an example here. So we've got the word ingenuity, and this is actually kind of a tricky one if you try to pull this apart from Romance languages of like the Latin. You do have to look at this word and see how it's being used in a context. Okay. Yes, this cleverness. A couple of you selecting D. Yeah, good. So that they had a vision for planning this city. So that cleverness, yeah, ingenuity is that's good. Okay. For these wrong ones, just realizing that these are not the synonyms for that word. That's if it's in like English as a foreign language, it's a little tricky to say like, well, I thought it was this, but I would get familiar with looking at something like the thesaurus.com. That's all these synonyms and antonyms as well, and seeing how these words relate to them, and trying to see to build up your vocabulary, not just through definitions, but also what they're related to. Ambition is not quite the same thing as using this being clever. It's different. It's different enough to make it a wrong answer, unfortunately. I can see how you might go like, oh, well, that must be ambition. But because that pairing of ingenuity and foresighted mean like they could see this into the future and plan ahead, they're being, those two are related more than that ambition. Okay. Sincerity is not the same there. Sincerity is like, well, for example, me teaching this class is like, I really want to help you. I'm being sincere. There's like an honest kind of desire or wish to do something. It's not the same there as that cleverness. Okay. In faith, that would be like believing in something, even though you don't know if it's going to work. That faith. So yeah, A, B, and C, these end up being like 3 different meanings that are not quite there. Okay. Let's look at this one about the fluctuations. Yes, variations. Okay. Yeah, for the D. So they refer in this paragraph. So if you just had to guess fluctuations and go with variations, that could work. But specifically within this paragraph, because they say that retreated, like the seaways, the water would retreat, that's like pull back, and then advance, go forward. And they said this happened numerous times. So it would go back and forth, like these kind of tides, but over a long period of time. So that would be fluctuating, like go up, go down, gets big, gets small. That would be relating here for these fluctuations. Okay. And then going back to the previous, somebody asking about the ingenuity, why is it the right answer? I would encourage you to look up that word ingenuity and how that relates to the that cleverness there. So vocabulary, it's kind of just keep building up these words that you're familiar with or not familiar with for that. Okay. So I think we've gone through about 6 types. I do want to get through these other ones. So reference, this one is a little bit more rare. It's not quite as common. I see them in the passages. It's usually referring to like a pronoun. And you want to be careful if that's singular or plural, if it's like first person, second person, third person, and make sure that the grammar kind of fits with it. So let's look at an example here. So for example, this one, it says this glacial outwash. So that sounds kind of like a uncountable word there. It's not the water itself, because if you look at letter C and say, if you look at the sentence and say the water was always laden with water, then it looks a little weird. So like water having water. So it's this D. So in looking at the earlier part of the paragraph saying these particles, which was like sand and pebbles, and then they come back to that and say these pebbles and gravel and sand, and then those concepts get under the umbrella or this category of glacial outwash there. So this is an example of a reference there where you're kind of, they give you parts of a definition and then they give you the term that definition kind of relates to, or these examples of how they relate to that concept. So it's a little bit of your short-term memory and seeing like what that refers to and making sure, for example, like if we chose letter C, like water has water, that accidentally creates a wrong answer if we're not careful. Okay. Let's move forward. Okay, sentence simplification. This one can be a little harder. Now, I would recommend that you get into your grammar to recognize like clauses, dependent and independent clauses, and what's essential, what's not essential. And usually they're leaving some stuff out, or they are making something wrong. They're kind of mixing and matching some information in a confusing way. This one does get into a little bit your grammatical understanding of a sentence. And they do say kind of be sensitive to what makes this kind of wrong choice. They usually state this in the instructions to say it changes the meaning or it leaves something out. So don't ignore the instructions on this one. They do, yeah, those are 2 important ways that you're going to get a wrong answer. Okay. Now this one is annoying. And I included what was at the top of this reading passage, which is this timing table about these eras, the Paleozoic, the Mesozoic, the Cenozoic. However, you have to think about like what I said about the dust on a table. If you had dust from the Paleozoic era on your table, I mean, just bear with me for a second. If you had dust from that era on your table, that would be at the bottom. Then if you had dust from the Mesozoic era on your table, it would be sitting on top of the Paleozoic era. And little by little, the Cretaceous would be sitting on top of the Jurassic would be sitting on top of the Triassic. And lastly, the most recent era, the Cenozoic, that dust would be sitting on top of the Mesozoic. Okay. I hope that makes sense when they talk about this fossil record, kind of sitting on how those, that dust and those layers are kind of sitting on top of each other. So the oldest is at the bottom, the most recent is at the top. And then this information being kind of, yeah. So yeah, got a couple of people answering so far. Well, actually just one person answering so far. So yeah, show you. Yeah, okay. I got at least two people choosing A. Yes. So we've got this abrupt extinction. So they say like abruptly, or they disappear. Disappear would be to go extinct. And it doesn't mean that somebody removed them. It doesn't mean that they didn't survive. It doesn't mean that they were unable to survive. It's just they were gone. So this kind of, that there's few of them that survived, or that somebody removed them. No. And that they were unable to survive. No, it's just that they were gone. They were gone. Okay. But this one, like getting your head around this sentence and kind of what's going on, you do have to kind of look at this kind of like the how stuff settles for the time period and going up through the rocks. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Insert text. This one is, yeah, I understand you needing more time to kind of untangle this stuff. So it's processing a lot of dense information and quickly and moving on, because if we spend too much time on a particular question, we're going to run out of time for the other ones. So you do want to kind of figure out what are your weaker questions and start going through them systematically again and again and again, kind of figure out those ones and kind of get your strategies for them. The insert text one, as I put here, like a picture of like a puzzle, and you've got multiple places where a puzzle piece could fit, and you're looking for context clues. You're kind of looking at the puzzle piece that you're holding in your hand, and you're looking at where these shapes and the colors, and trying to look for the context clues for this insert. You kind of look for some of these phrases, like for example, on the contrary, as a result, further, furthermore, therefore. In other words, similar. Those would be connecting words that kind of help you notice if there's some kind of a flow. So you want to look at the sentence before, the sentence you're inserting, and the sentence after. Also, if you're at the threshold of a paragraph, like the end of a paragraph, the start of a paragraph, you may need to look at the previous sentence or two at the previous paragraph to see how that paragraph ended and how it's transitioning into a new paragraph. There might be that boundary of one paragraph to another one that does help you notice how, like, this paragraph said this, and then the next one is going to transition and develop something different. So don't just only look at that paragraph where you're inserting the sentence. You may need to look a little bit before to see how it flows. Okay, so this one is about that Teotihuacan one, about the this information here. And we've got the, in fact, artifacts and pottery from Teotihuacan have been discovered in sites as far as away as Mayan lowlands, Guatemalan highlands, northern Mexico, the Gulf Coast of Mexico. Those are specific places. And usually ETS and TOEFL, they usually go from general to specific. So general and then specific. That's one thing that ETS usually does. General, specific. That's one little clue that can help you with this answer choice. Already got an answer. Yes. Yeah, a couple of you already answering correctly for D. So D, we're going from that general to specific. We've got the term Mesoamerica, like central and modern Mexico. And then the specific details of those places, the lowlands, the highlands, northern Mexico, Gulf Coast, that's going from general to specific. And also that phrase, in fact, so that they are highlighting these details of saying, like, that's economic and religious contact, then they show that, they refer to that with the artifacts and the pottery are these supporting details of, so you've got general information, economic and religious contact, then specifically what's an evidence of that, artifacts and pottery, and then Mesoamerica in general, and then more specifically these place names. Okay. This last one, and I'm unfortunately kind of running out of time here. Prose summary, this is usually kind of one of the harder ones that usually students are struggling with. This is usually at the end. I mean, not usually, it's always at the end of the reading passage. At this point, you need to get a little bit of the main ideas. And what I would usually say is, like, just before you finish this question, like the insert text one, go back and scroll through the entire, like, go back up to the paragraph number 1 for yourself and start refreshing your memory. What was the paragraph 1 about? Not necessarily the first sentence, last sentence, but what was the main idea of paragraph 1? Okay, what was the main idea of paragraph 2? And etc. Until you kind of just refresh your memory on all 6 or 7 paragraphs. And then, because when you look at the Prose summary one, you won't, what is it? You won't be able to see the information side by side anymore. If you need to see the text, you're going to have to click on a button that says like view text, and then it'll pop up in a separate window, but you won't be able to see the questions or the phrases side by side anymore. So they're testing your short-term memory on this one. This is where I might use a piece of paper if necessary to kind of get a couple ideas, because again, they're hoping that you're not going to pay attention to small details, and some small details might make this a wrong answer choice. So, and they want you to avoid minor ideas, and they want you to avoid things that are not in the passage. Okay. Now, this one's going to be a little tricky for us to do on the screen because we didn't actually really go through the entire passage paragraph by paragraph. It is there on that pad. It is on that PDF that I shared with you in the chat box. But for the purposes of like just showing you how this works, the instructions are always going to be the same. They say they don't want something that's like a minor idea or not in the passage. They give you a sample sentence to say like Teotihuacan was a highly developed city. And then they are compiling or synthesizing a lot of this information. And so it won't be a specific sentence itself, but they will be taking bits and pieces where it's applicable and compiling that into these main ideas. So looking at these answer choices through A through F, one thing I usually notice is it's usually not like the answers are like A, B, C, or D, E, F. It's usually like 2 from one group, 1 from another, or vice versa. 1 from this group, 2 from that. It's usually not A, B, C, D, E, F. It might be like, okay, A and B, but not C. And then, okay, E or D. Just, it's kind of an insight I get from looking at a lot of these summary questions. Don't say that that thing is a kind of like a hard and fast rule that they always do that, because they're trying to keep students on their toes. But I sometimes notice it might be 2 from here, 1 from there, 1 from here, 2 from there, in terms of what's right, what's wrong on there. Just keep that in mind as just a little thing to notice sometimes. Okay, so for this one, again, because we didn't see the whole thing, it's not quite fair to just test you on this one. But it will be these 3 things of A, C, and E. As I mentioned, like, okay, we've got A and C from the first group, that's 2 from the first one. 1 of them is wrong in the first one, and then 1 from the other one is correct, and 2 of them are wrong. So it's kind of like 2 and 1, 1 and 2. And as you look at these sentences, you'll find some things that might be either too specific, too small, like this religious, I don't know. Well, in this letter D, religious shrines, actually in the text, they only said shrine 1. So I mentioned before, like a small detail can make something right or wrong, like just even singular plural. Okay. And let me get to the fill in the table one. So this one is a little bit less frequent. It's usually the summary ones that are more frequent there. In terms of the scoring, they will possibly give you, let's say, 7 sentences, and you need to put 5 of them in the correct spots. and to get the full 3 points. So this one actually is like another extra point compared to the summary one. It's worth kind of being careful on the table one and not just guessing. And they're usually giving you two things that are contrasting. Like, I don't know, herbivores and carnivores, or this kind of tree, that kind of tree. Let's look at an example here. So these ones are two types of rivers, and they give you like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 sentences, and you need to select 3 from here, 2 from there, and this will give you 3 points, and you need to kind of put them in the right place on there. Okay. So I need to start wrapping up here. We went a little bit longer than I was expecting, but thank you for a lot of your feedback here, that you found this informative and helpful, and also asking if I do other workshops for the other sections as well. So yes, feel free to reach out to me, send me an email, or send me a message on social media. Let me just go back to the beginning here, where I was. No. So yeah, you can screenshot that for just reaching out to me, either on Facebook or on Instagram, and also my email here. I should have put this on the screen. I mean, you do have my email from the link for today's session, but let me know. And I am organizing other like small group things. I unfortunately, I muted everybody here so we can get in the chat box, but I do organize also writing sessions for reviewing essays. I have been organizing several small groups for the TOEFL speaking section as well, reviewing audio recordings and giving feedback and going through that whole process. I've also been requested to do a little bit of stuff for the listening section and looking at note taking and what do I notice when I'm listening and taking those notes. Okay. But yeah. And what am I going to do? Have the speaking workshop? I will organize them soon. Get in touch with me for the speaking sections as well. And that was it. Yeah. Yeah. And waiting for further classes. Okay. And yes. Yeah, I will send some resources, some questions here, like further resources for practicing the reading section. I'll send those to you as a follow-up with today's video session here. But and if you have follow-up questions from this, please, yeah, feel free to reach out and let me know. And yeah, thank you so much for being here today. I really appreciate all your comments and your questions. And yeah, I'm happy to organize a few more things to help you guys. So yeah, and yeah, feel free to reach out if you have further questions here. Okay, so best of luck. Hope you got a lot of out of this session, and I will get you the replay very soon. So thank you. Have a great day. I'll send you the replay video shortly once this finishes. Okay. Bye for now. Take care. You're very welcome. Take care.